when a black woman CEO was suddenly forced out of her own bank. She didn't just fight back, she sparked a movement that changed everything. Alicia Reynolds was not the kind of woman who gave up easily. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, she grew up in a small neighborhood where dreams were big, but opportunities were small.
Wow.
Her parents worked hard, her father drove a bus, and her mother was a nurse. From a young age, Alicia watched them struggle to pay bills, save money, and deal with banks that never seemed to care about people like them. She often wondered why it was so difficult for honest, hardworking people to get ahead. This question stayed in her mind for years, slowly growing into a powerful dream. As a child, Alicia loved numbers. While other kids played with dolls or video games, she would sit with a calculator, balancing imaginary budgets. She was naturally smart and deeply curious. Her teachers saw her potential and encouraged her to aim high. When she got accepted into a top business school with a scholarship, her entire neighborhood celebrated. It was a big moment not just for her, but for everyone who believed that a black girl from a poor background could achieve something great. College was not easy. Alicia faced challenges every step of the way. She was often the only black woman in her finance classes. Professors overlooked her. Students underestimated her. But she stayed focused. She studied hard, stayed up late reading about economics, and asked bold questions in lectures. She wasn't afraid to speak up, even when others tried to silence. Her confidence grew not from comfort, but from surviving discomfort. She learned how to turn her pain into power. After graduation, Alicia joined a large investment bank. It was a cold, fast-moving world filled with suits and sharp voices. Many of her colleagues came from rich families and elite backgrounds. They had connections, she had none. She started at the bottom, doing long hours for low pay, watching how the financial world truly worked. She noticed how big banks ignored small businesses, especially those run by people of color. She saw how difficult it was for minority entrepreneurs to get loans. It made her angry, but also motivated. While others chased profit, Alicia began dreaming of purpose. Over the years, she climbed the corporate ladder, her sharp mind strong. Ethics and bold ideas earned her respect. But even as she moved up, she kept hearing the same phrase whispered behind closed doors. She's good, but she's different. That different meant she didn't fit their mold. She wasn't quiet. She wasn't wealthy, and she wasn't willing to play politics. Still, she kept going, building her career step by step, always thinking about the dream she had back in her childhood. That dream was to build a bank. Not just any bank, but one that truly cared about communities that had been ignored for decades. A place where small business owners could walk in and feel seen, where black and brown families could get home loans without unfair interest rates. A bank where wealth didn't only mean money, it meant opportunity. When she finally decided to take the leap, it was both exciting and terrifying. She left her six-figure job, cashed out her savings, and began building from scratch as she worked. Out of a tiny office with peeling paint and one assistant who believed in her vision, they made phone calls, knocked on doors, and pitched her idea to anyone who would listen. Many investors laughed. Co-community bank run by a black woman? Sounds risky, they said. Some even offered her funding on the condition that she step down as CEO. She refused every time. She didn't want to build something just to hand it over. This was her vision, and she wasn't going to let anyone control it. After nearly 2 years of struggle, sleepless nights, and rejections, Alicia finally secured enough support to launch Unity Trust Bank. The opening day was emotional. The first branch was located right in the heart of her old neighborhood. People lined up outside to open accounts. Local business owners brought flowers. An old man hugged her and said, "You did what we never thought was possible." Unity Trust Bank was different from day one. The staff looked like the customers. The walls were covered with artwork by local artists. There were financial literacy programs, small business workshops, and community events held in the bank's lobby. Alicia made sure that no one felt out of place.
Oh.
Slowly but surely, the bank grew. More branches opened in cities where other banks had closed. National media started noticing. Alicia was featured in magazines as a rising star in finance, but she didn't care about the headlines. What mattered to her was when a single mother walked into her office and said, "Thanks to your loan, I opened my own salon." As Unity Trust Bank expanded, more investors showed interest. Some were genuine, others were just chasing profits. Alicia had to make hard choices. She needed capital to grow, but she didn't want to lose control. She carefully chose her partners, picking those who shared her values. Still, a few board members managed to enter through backdoor deals and political pressure. They smiled in meetings, praised her vision in public, but held different plans behind the scenes. Alicia noticed small signs at first. Some board members questioned her decisions more harshly than others. They asked why she focused so much on community programs. They hinted that the bank should shift its strategy to attract wealthier clients. She pushed back, defending her original mission. "We're not just building a bank," she said in one meeting. "We're building trust." Not everyone liked that answer. Despite the tension, Alicia kept moving forward. She launched a fund specifically for minority-owned startups. She partnered with historically black colleges to train future bankers. She even began planning an online platform to make her services available nationwide. The bank's profits were rising, but more importantly, so was its impact. People felt inspired. Employees worked late not because they were told to, but because they believed in what they were doing. Alicia had created something rare, a bank that was both powerful and human. But with success came danger. In private meetings, certain board members began plotting. They believed the bank had grown enough and no longer needed Alicia's leadership. They wanted someone more traditional, someone who wouldn't challenge their profit-first mindset. Whispers of a takeover began to float around. Alicia heard rumors, but she brushed them off. She believed her track record would protect her. She had built this from the ground up. Surely they wouldn't push her out of her own creation, but she was wrong. The stage was being set. The smiling faces around the boardroom table were hiding sharp knives. And Alicia, the woman who had once been underestimated for her skin color, gender, and boldness, was about to face her greatest challenge, yet not in the streets, not in the media, but inside the very walls she had built with love, sweat, and purpose. What Alicia didn't know was that just days from now, the very board she had trusted would betray her in the most brutal way. The battle that followed would not just test her leadership, it would change everything she thought she knew about power, loyalty, and justice. It was a bright and quiet Tuesday morning. Alicia Reynolds arrived at the Unity Trust Bank headquarters, just like she did every other day come, confident and full of purpose. She wore a navy blue suit and carried her favorite black leather bag, the one she'd had since the first day the bank opened. Her assistant greeted her warmly, and staff members smiled as she passed by. Alicia was known not just as a boss, but as a leader who cared. She always had a kind word, a warm smile, or a bit of encouragement for everyone. That morning, she had been told there was an important board meeting scheduled. Nothing seemed unusual. Meetings with the board happened often. Growth plans, sometimes investments, and sometimes new community projects. Alicia had even spent part of the night reviewing documents and preparing a few notes for her presentation. She walked into the boardroom expecting business as usual, but what she didn't know was that nothing about that meeting was usual. As she entered the room, the atmosphere felt different. The board members, usually relaxed and friendly, looked cold and serious. Some avoided eye contact. Some sat with crossed arms and blank faces. Alicia greeted them all the same way she always did, but something in her gut told her that something was off. She placed her laptop on the table, ready to begin. Before she could even start speaking, the chairman of the board, Mr. Langford, cleared his throat and spoke. "Before we proceed with today's agenda," he said stiffly, "we need to address a matter of urgency." Alicia was confused. She looked around the table, trying to understand what he meant. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Langford continued. "We've reached a decision regarding the leadership of Unity Trust Bank," he said, avoiding her eyes. "After discussion, in a formal vote, the board has decided to terminate your role as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately." The words felt like a punch to the stomach. For a moment, Alicia thought she had heard him wrong. Terminate? Effective immediately? Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her face steady. Her voice, though quiet, was firm. "I'm sorry, what is this about?" she asked, her eyes scanning the room. "I wasn't informed of any concerns. What vote? When was this decision made?" Langford shifted uncomfortably. "We've had several closed discussions over the past few weeks. There have been ongoing concerns about your management style, strategic decisions, and overall direction of the company. The vote was finalized yesterday." Alicia's heart was pounding. "You mean you held secret meetings without me? And you voted behind my back to fire me from the very bank I built?" Another board member, Mrs. Carlton, spoke up. "We appreciate everything you've done, Alicia. You were the visionary. You brought Unity Trust into existence. But we believe the bank has now entered a new phase, and that phase requires a different kind of leadership." A different kind of leadership. Those words stung more than anything else. She understood exactly what they meant. To them, her vision was no longer useful. Now that the bank was growing, now that profits were increasing, they wanted someone who looked like them, thought like them, and didn't challenge the system. Alicia was no longer seen as an asset. She was a threat to their control. She took a deep breath, stood tall, and looked around the room. "I started this bank in a rented office with no heating and one assistant. I poured everything I had into this, not just money, but my heart, my values, my life. You didn't build this. You came in after it was already standing strong." Langford looked down. No one answered. "We're offering a fair severance package," he finally said. "We hope we can count on your discretion and professionalism moving forward." Discretion and professionalism. They wanted her to leave quietly, smile, disappear, and let them take everything she built. Alicia stood frozen for a moment, then calmly packed up her laptop. As she headed for the door, 2 security guards entered the room. One of them stepped beside her. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reynolds," he said awkwardly. "We were asked to escort you from the premises." The board said nothing. No one stood up. No one thanked her. No one defended her. She walked out of the building where her name was still written in gold letters on the front door. Staff members watched in shock as she was escorted past them.
Ow.
Some whispered. Some cried. No one understood what had happened. To most of them, Alicia was not just the CEO. She was the soul of the bank. Outside, Alicia stood still for a moment. The sun was shining, but her world had just been shaken. She opened her phone and called one person, her lawyer. In a calm, clear voice, she said only 5 words. "They just kicked me out." The lawyer didn't ask questions. "We're on it," he said. Told tight. Alicia sat on a bench nearby, thinking about everything that had just happened. Was this even real? She had heard stories like this before, founders being pushed out by investors, women being sidelined in boardrooms, black leaders being treated like they were temporary. But she never thought it would happen to her. Not like this. She wasn't. Just Saji was angry. Not just because they betrayed her, but because they thought she would take it quietly. They thought she would cry, go home, and disappear. But Alicia Reynolds was not built like that. Her strength didn't come from titles or offices. It came from everything she had fought through just to be here in the first place. 1 hour passed. During that time, Alicia made several calls. Her legal team, her closest advisors, her communications director, and of a few trusted allies in the financial world were all alerted. No one was surprised. They had seen signs. But everyone agreed this couldn't go unanswered. Meanwhile, inside the bank, the board tried to pretend everything was fine. They called an emergency PR meeting. They instructed staff to remain calm. They told department heads to stay focused on the mission. But it didn't work. Word spread fast. Employees were confused and scared. Clients began calling asking what had happened. Some even threatened to close their accounts. Social media posts started popping up, demanding answers. Alicia's removal wasn't going to be a quiet event. It was turning into a storm. Then, almost exactly 1 hour after Alicia had been kicked out, a team of well-dressed, confident individuals walked through the front doors of Unity Trust Bank. It was her legal team. They weren't there to talk. They were there to act. One by one, they served legal documents to the board members. Allegations of breach of contract, claims of wrongful termination, accusations of discrimination, racial and gender-based. Attached were pages of evidence Alicia had gathered quietly over the past few months, suspecting something was wrong. Emails, meeting notes, internal memos. All of it was now part of a legal firestorm that had just begun. The board was stunned. They hadn't expected such a fast, powerful response. They thought Alicia would stay quiet. They thought they had outplayed her. But they had made one mistake. They had underestimated her. Outside, reporters had started gathering. Someone had leaked the story. News headlines flashed on phones and laptops across the country. Black woman CEO kicked out of her own bank. Public support flooded in. Activists, influencers, and community leaders voiced outrage. #spread. Former employees spoke out. One tweet read, "Alicia Reynolds gave us dignity and purpose. What these people did to her is unforgivable."
Wow.
Alicia watched from her home, surrounded by her team. She said little. She didn't need to say much. Her plan was already in motion. They had stolen her title, but they would not steal her truth. The board thought they had ended her story, but they had only started a new chapter. Alicia Reynolds sat in her living room, surrounded by stacks of documents, laptops, and legal files. Her legal team had turned the space into a temporary war room. The soft lights and family photos in the room gave it a peaceful appearance, but the energy inside was intense. Everyone was focused, speaking in low voices, going through every email, every contract, every word that could be used to fight back. Alicia didn't say much. Her eyes were sharp, her jaw tight. She had been pushed out of her own bank, but she wasn't broken. If anything, she was more determined than ever. The betrayal still stung deeply. She had trusted those board members. She had shared her dreams with them, invited them into her vision, given them space at the table she had built from scratch. Now they had turned against her, thinking they could erase her with one boardroom vote. But Alicia wasn't someone who could be erased. She had faced poverty, racism, and every kind of doubt before. This was just another challenge. And she was ready. Her lawyers had already filed multiple legal actions. The most important one was the breach of contract. Alicia had made sure from the very beginning that her role as CEO was protected by legal agreements. She had spent long hours with attorneys when the bank first launched, making sure that no one could remove her without just cause. And now, those same contracts would become her strongest weapons. A legal team had already spotted several violations. The board had held secret meetings without notifying her. They had voted in her absence. They had failed to provide proper documentation for their claims. Most importantly, they had offered no proof of misconduct. Everything they had done was shady and possibly illegal, but Alicia knew that court battles take time. Lawsuits move slowly. What she needed now was something more immediate, something that would shift public opinion and put pressure on the board. That's where her communications team came in. These were not ordinary PR people. They were strategists, activists, and media experts who knew how to shape a story, how to turn silence into noise, and how to make the world pay attention. The first thing they did was prepare Alicia's statement. She refused to act like a victim. Her message was strong and clear. She had been unfairly removed. She would fight for justice. And she was doing it not just for herself, but for every founder, every woman, and every black leader who had ever been pushed aside. Her words were calm, powerful, and full of dignity. Within minutes of publishing the statement online, it went viral. Thousands of people shared it. Celebrities tweeted in her support. Civil rights organizations issued statements backing her. People from all over the country, small business owners, students, even retired bankers wrote messages of encouragement. Some told their own stories of being mistreated, of being told they weren't the right fit despite doing excellent work. Alicia's story had become more than just about her. It had become a symbol of something much bigger. Inside Unity Trust Bank, chaos was growing. The board members were nervous. Customers were closing accounts. Journalists were calling nonstop. Employees were confused and upset. Morale dropped. Several department heads held private meetings, wondering if they should resign. The board tried to calm things down by issuing their own statement, claiming Alicia had been removed due to strategic differences. But no one believed them. Their vague explanations only made things worse. Then came the media interviews. Alicia appeared on national television. She sat across from respected anchors and answered questions with grace and strength. She never shouted, never complained. She simply told the truth. She spoke about her dream, about why she started the bank, and about how the same system she tried to fix had turned against her. People listened. Many cried. Some got angry. A fire was spreading, and Alicia was at the center of it. Meanwhile, her lawyers continued digging deeper. They found emails where board members openly mocked her ideas, calling them too emotional or too urban. One message even joked about how the bank would be better off with someone less passionate and more professional. That was the code they often used: passionate for difficult, urban for black, professional for white. These emails were added to the legal case as evidence of bias and discrimination. One of the most shocking discoveries came from an internal whistleblower, a senior employee who had worked closely with the board. He came forward with a recording of a secret meeting. In the recording, the board members discussed ways to quietly remove Alicia and replace her with someone who wouldn't make everything about race and community. The tone was smug, disrespectful, and clearly racist. That recording changed everything. It wasn't just a legal fight anymore. It was now a national scandal. Alicia's team decided to release parts of the recording to the press. Within hours, the story exploded across every news channel and social media platform. The public reaction was immediate and furious. Protests were organized outside Unity Trust Bank locations. People stood with signs reading, "We are with Alicia, and this bank was built on truth." Shareholders started demanding answers. Some major investors even threatened to pull out unless the board stepped down. But Alicia wasn't just focused on revenge. She was thinking about the future. She knew that even if she won her legal case, the damage done to Unity Trust Bank might be permanent. The trust she had worked so hard to build had been shaken. The people who once believed in the bank were now confused. Some felt betrayed. Alicia didn't just want to win a court case. She wanted to restore what had been lost. One evening, she sat with her closest advisors and asked a question that surprised them all. "What if we build something new?" He looked at her confused. "I mean a new bank? A better one? One that can't be hijacked. One that belongs to the people from the start." It was a bold idea, maybe even crazy, but Alicia was serious. She had built something amazing once before. Why not do it again, this time smarter, stronger, and even more transparent? She began sketching out plans. She contacted her original team, the ones who had believed in her from day one. She spoke to financial experts, community leaders, and tech developers. The vision started forming: a digital-first bank with branches in underserved areas, complete ownership by community shareholders, real-time transparency, legal protections that made it impossible for outsiders to take control. Meanwhile, the legal battle against Unity Trust Bank was moving forward. Alicia's legal team filed an injunction to stop the board from appointing a new CEO. They demanded access to internal documents and financial reports. The board was now under serious investigation. Regulators were watching. Government agencies were getting involved. It wasn't just a case of wrongful termination anymore. It was about ethics, justice, and accountability. In the middle of all this, Alicia remained calm. She didn't attack her enemies in public. She didn't try to ruin reputations. She let the facts speak for themselves. Her grace under pressure made people admire her even more. She became a role model for young entrepreneurs, especially women of color. Schools invited her to speak. She was offered book deals and awards, but Alicia turned most of them down. She wasn't interested in fame. She had work to do. At home, she found moments of peace in the smallest things: watering her plants, cooking with her mother, or walking around her neighborhood. These moments reminded her why she started all this in the first place. It wasn't about power. It was about purpose. The third week after her removal, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived signed by dozens of Unity Trust Bank employees. It was a letter of support. They expressed their sadness, their anger, and their loyalty to her. Some even resigned from the bank in protest. Others promised to stay and fight from within. Alicia read the letter slowly, tears in her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt a deep, healing sense of hope. She wasn't alone. The people still believed in her. The system had tried to silence her. The board had tried to erase her. But Alicia Reynolds wasn't going anywhere. She was not done. In fact, she was just getting started. The battle was far from over, but the fire inside her had never burned brighter. The days after the letter from the Unity Trust Bank employees arrived were some of the most intense and meaningful in Alicia Reynolds' life. That letter was more than just words on paper. It was a powerful reminder that she was not fighting alone. It was proof that despite the betrayal of the board, the spirit of the bank and its people was still alive. This gave Alicia a new strength, a deeper sense of responsibility, and a renewed purpose to fight harder and smarter. Alicia's living room, which had already become a center for her legal and strategic team, now buzzed with even more energy. Calls, meetings, brainstorming sessions, they all happened one after the other. But this time, there was a different tone. Instead of just reacting to the crisis, they started planning for the future, for change, and for rebuilding trust. One of the first things Alicia insisted on was transparency. She believed that the bank's problems started because decisions were made in secret. So, she began sharing regular updates with her supporters, employees, and customers. Instead of hiding behind lawyers and official statements, Alicia chose to be open. She posted videos, wrote blog posts, and held virtual town halls where anyone could ask questions. This honest communication made people feel included and respected. It was the exact opposite of the cold, closed boardroom that had pushed her out. The bank's employees, inspired by Alicia's courage, began organizing themselves. Groups formed within different departments: finance, marketing, customer service, each focused on keeping the bank's mission alive from inside. These employees started documenting their experiences, sharing stories of what Unity Trust Bank really meant to the community and why it needed to stay true to its founding values. They created a network that kept morale high and encouraged others to speak up. At the same time, Alicia's legal battle with the board was heating up. Court dates were set, and the case was gaining public attention. Her lawyers discovered more evidence of wrongdoing. It became clear that the board's attempt to remove Alicia was not just unfair, was part of a larger pattern of discrimination and corruption. Several former board members were also found to have conflicts of interest, making decisions that benefited themselves rather than the bank or its customers. As this information came to light, regulators began investigations into the bank's leadership practices. This external pressure added to the growing public outcry. Alicia knew this was a turning point. The bank's reputation was at stake. The board was losing power fast. But Alicia's vision wasn't just about winning back her job or exposing the board's mistakes. She wanted real, lasting change. She wanted Unity Trust Bank to become a model of fairness, diversity, and community empowerment. To do this, she worked closely with her advisors to draft a new proposal, a blueprint for a bank led not by a small group of elites, but by the people it served. This new plan included a revolutionary ownership structure. Instead of shares being controlled by a few wealthy investors, the bank would allow community members to become shareholders. This meant that local businesses, families, and individuals could own a piece of the bank. Their voices would matter. Their votes would count. This would protect the bank from future takeovers and ensure its leadership truly reflected the community's needs. Alicia also focused on creating more opportunities for underrepresented groups. She wanted Unity Trust Bank to be a place where women, people of color, and young entrepreneurs could thrive. She planned mentorship programs, affordable loans, and educational workshops that would help everyone succeed. And this wasn't just about banking, it was about building a stronger, fairer society. All this work was tiring. But Alicia never lost sight of why she started. She remembered the stories of the people she had met in the early days, the single mother who opened her first savings account, small business owner who got a loan to expand, the young student who learned about finance for the first time. These stories gave her hope and fueled her determination. As the legal case continued, Alicia also began to think about healing. She knew that the fight wasn't just about contracts and courtrooms. It was about trust, respect, and dignity. Reached out to some of the employees who stayed at the bank, offering support and encouragement. She sent messages to customers, thanking them for their loyalty and asking for their continued faith. One day, a group of community leaders invited Alicia to speak at a local event. Standing on a small stage in front of hundreds of people, Alicia told her story, not just the pain and betrayal, but also the hope and vision. She spoke about courage, resilience, and the power of community. People listened intently. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Many stood and applauded. After the event, several local businesses approached Alicia. They wanted to partner with her to help build the new bank she dreamed of. This outpouring of support was another sign that her fight was not just personal, it was collective. Behind the scenes, Alicia's team continued to negotiate with the board. There were moments of tension and frustration, but also small steps toward progress. Some board members realized that their old ways were not sustainable and began to support parts of Alicia's vision. Others resisted fiercely, but the tide was turning. Meanwhile, Alicia's plan for a new community-owned bank started to take shape. She worked with financial experts to design a secure and user-friendly digital platform. They wanted the new bank to be accessible to everyone, even those without easy access to traditional banking. Mobile apps, online customer service, and branch locations in underserved neighborhoods were all part of the plan. To fund this new venture, Alicia launched a crowdfunding campaign. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people donated small amounts, showing their trust and belief in her vision. This was not just money, it was a statement. People wanted to be part of a bank that stood for justice and inclusion. Months passed. The legal case reached a critical moment when a judge ruled that Alicia's removal had indeed violated her contract and was tainted by discrimination. This victory was celebrated widely, but Alicia knew the real work was still ahead. Unity Trust Bank was changing. The board was restructured. New leadership was elected, including members who shared Alicia's values. Policies were rewritten to promote fairness and transparency. And through it all, Alicia remained a guiding force, sometimes as a consultant, sometimes as a mentor, but always as a symbol of strength. The bank slowly began to regain trust. Customers returned. Employees felt hopeful again. The community saw a real example of what was possible when courage meets commitment. Alicia's story became an inspiration far beyond the world of banking. It was a story about standing up to injustice. It's about leading with heart and vision. It's about never giving up even when the odds seem impossible. In quiet moments, Alicia would reflect on the journey. From the painful day she was kicked out to the rebuilding of the bank, every step had taught her something valuable. She learned about power, resilience, and the importance of community. But most of all, she learned that true leadership is not about holding a title, it's about lifting others up. Her journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, but Alicia was ready. She had found her purpose anew, and with it, a deeper hope for the future, not just for herself or the bank, but for everyone who believed in a fair and just world. The final part of Alicia Reynolds' journey was not just about winning back her position or rebuilding a bank, it was about creating a legacy that would inspire generations. After all the battles, the betrayals, and the hard-fought victories, Alicia understood something very important. True success is measured not by the power you hold, but by the positive change you bring to others. This realization shaped the final chapter of her story, one full of hope, healing, and transformation. Once the legal battle settled in her favor, Alicia didn't rush back to the CEO's chair at Unity Trust Bank. She understood that returning to a broken system without deep changes could only repeat the same problems. Instead, she chose a different path, a path focused on healing the community, empowering others, and building something sustainable and just. Her vision for the new bank, which had been taking shape quietly during the legal storm, was now her full focus. The community-owned bank wasn't just an idea anymore. It was becoming a reality. Alicia and her team worked day and night, collaborating with financial experts, community leaders, tech innovators, and everyday people who wanted a say in how the bank was run. The new bank was designed to be radically transparent. Every decision, every financial report, and every policy would be open for public review. This openness was revolutionary in the banking world, where secrecy and exclusive control often dominate. Alicia believed that if people truly understood how their money was being used and how decisions were made, trust would grow naturally. Trust, after all, was the foundation of any strong bank. To build this trust, Alicia launched regular community forums where customers and shareholders could ask questions, offer ideas, and participate in shaping the bank's future. These meetings were lively and honest. Sometimes disagreements happened, but Alicia welcomed them as part of a healthy conversation. She often said, "Real change doesn't come from silence, it comes from listening." In addition to transparency, Alicia focused on inclusion. The new bank had a clear mission to serve those who had historically been ignored or mistreated by traditional financial institutions. Low-income families, women entrepreneurs, immigrants, and young people found a welcoming place where their financial goals mattered. The bank offered special loan programs with low interest, financial literacy workshops, and mentorship opportunities. One inspiring story came from a young woman named Jasmine, who had started a small catering business, but struggled to get a loan from conventional banks. With Alicia's new bank, Jasmine received funding and guidance that helped her grow her business into a thriving local favorite. Stories like Jasmine's were the true measure of success, and Alicia made sure these stories were heard and celebrated. Building this new institution wasn't without challenges. There were technical hurdles, funding gaps, and moments when some doubted if it could really work. But Alicia's experience taught her the importance of patience and persistence. She encouraged her team to view each obstacle as a chance to learn and improve. Slowly but surely, the bank grew, gaining more customers and community shareholders. Meanwhile, Alicia also used her story and her platform to advocate for broader change in the financial industry. She spoke at conferences, met with policymakers, and worked with advocacy groups to push for laws that would make banking fairer and more accessible nationwide. She believed that systemic problems required systemic solutions, and that the fight for justice extended far beyond her own bank. Her leadership style was different from many CEOs. She was approachable, humble, and focused on collaboration. She didn't want to be seen as a distant figurehead, but as a partner in progress. This approach inspired her team and customers alike. Employees felt valued, customers felt heard, and the community felt empowered. On a personal level, Alicia also found healing. The pain of betrayal and public scrutiny had been heavy, but with time, she transformed those experiences into strength. She began mentoring young Black women entrepreneurs, sharing not only her business knowledge, but also her lessons on resilience and courage. She started writing a book to tell her full story, hoping it would inspire others facing similar struggles. Alicia's family remained a vital support system. Their unwavering belief in her gave her strength on the hardest days. She also took time for herself. Meditation, nature walks, and moments with friends helped keep her balanced. She learned that leadership was not about sacrificing everything, but about caring for oneself to be able to care for others. As the years went by, the new community bank flourished. It became a model for other cities and inspired similar initiatives nationwide. Alicia was often invited to share her vision and experience, and she gladly did so. Knowing that true leadership meant lifting others up, one unforgettable moment came when Alicia was invited to a national awards ceremony recognizing leaders who made a difference in social justice and business innovation. Standing on that stage, receiving the award, Alicia didn't just think about her own journey, she thought about everyone who had walked with her. The employees who stayed loyal, the customers who believed, the legal team that fought fiercely, and the community that never gave up hope. She spoke to the audience with heartfelt words. This award is not just mine. It belongs to every person who dares to stand up against injustice, who believes in fairness, and who works to build a better future. Together, we can change the world one step, one voice, one heart at a time. Her words echoed far beyond that room. They reached schools, community centers, and homes across the country. Alicia Reynolds became more than a CEO. She became a symbol of hope, a beacon for change, and a reminder that courage and vision could rewrite even the hardest stories. Looking back, Alicia knew her journey was filled with unexpected twists. Getting kicked out of her own bank had been devastating, but it had also opened doors to a greater purpose. She had learned that setbacks were not the end, they were beginnings in disguise. And through every challenge, she held on to her belief in justice, community, and the power of dreams. Her legacy was not just about business success. It was about creating a space where everyone could belong and thrive. It was about proving that leadership is about heart and integrity, not just power and titles. And it was about inspiring others to stand up, speak out, and build a better tomorrow. Alicia's story continues to inspire people everywhere. It reminds us that even in the face of betrayal and hardship, hope can grow, that courage can break barriers, and that one person's fight can ignite a movement that changes lives. Her journey wasn't just hers, it was ours too. A story of resilience, justice, and the unbreakable human spirit.